Hello, welcome to another episode of Logan's Movie Reviews, and today we are talking about parts 1 and 2 of When They See Us, a dramatization of the events surrounding the Central Park Five, and I am joined once again by Juan Silva. What's up, man? Oh, let me see if he's on. You got you?
You hear me now? All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be talking, yes, like you said, a movie, not a movie, but this is the greatest episode of television history, a limited series on Netflix. This is the first part as we review parts 1 and 2 of the controversial 1989 case involving the Central Park Five.
Yeah, and for those of you who have not seen it, I think you really ought to go out and watch it before you listen to this, because there's nothing like seeing it played out the way they do it, and it's all accurate, and they pay a close attention to detail, so definitely check it out before listening to this review.
Yes, I concur. Mm-hmm.
So we will be talking about parts 3 and 4 next week. So let's get into this one. This case, you lived through this case because you were living in what part of town was this mostly taking place in? Harlem, right?
Oh, it's funny because I live in a neighborhood where Yusuf Salam and Raymond Santana lived. I live in the same building that Raymond Santana lived in right now, in Hunt 10th Street, the Lehman houses, and across the street is the Schomburg co-op building in which Yusuf Salam lived in. And the beginning of the movie, there's several scenes filmed throughout my neighborhood. They filmed this last summer, this movie, and I remember when they were filming it, I was like, I didn't know it was this movie they were filming, and they put up a lot of in a lot of the storefronts, they put up fake storefronts to replica the 1980s. And when I'm watching the movie, it's like, oh, so that's the movie they were filming. Yeah, and I live a couple of blocks away from. Yeah, and I live a couple of blocks away from 110th Street in Central Park West, in Central Park North, and that's where the kids entered that night to join all the kids that were in Central Park that night.
Right. So this case, it unfolded very quickly. Like after this, we're gonna, when we go through the documentary. But just to give a little bit of background, it was at a time in. I mean, how would you characterize this time in New York? Was there like racial tensions already?
It was the most violent, and possibly, I'm not saying it was, but it was definitely the most violent time in New York City as far as crime was, because this was at the height of the crack epidemic. This was also the racial climate in this city was at an all-time high because of the several, like today, but the same thing happened back then with policemen gunning down unarmed young black men, and right around the time of the Howard Beach incident, in which several white members of the Howard Beach community beat down a young man of color because he happened to be dating somebody from their community.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that what year are we talking about here?
1989.
Yeah.
1989. Mm-hmm.
So you'd think that at that time, it's almost 1990, we didn't really think that there was that much racism left in the country, but I mean, obviously there was, but it just like...
Especially in the most liberal city in the United States, New York City, the racism and the racial climate was at an all-time high, and we had a Mayor Koch, that was oblivious to this. And the events of the Howard Beach murder and this Central Park situation, travesty, probably led to the election of New York City's first African American mayor, David Dinkins, that November.
Right, and it's not like he did a lot of great stuff, but he was in many ways kind of like the first. He cracked down on a lot of this shit like Giuliani did before Giuliani.
Well, Dickens did two things. Dickens did two things that helped that Giuliani capitalized on when Giuliani beat him. Remember that they went against each other 2 times. Dickens barely beat Giuliani in November of '89, and in November of '93, history tries to tell you something, but the facts were Giuliani barely beat Dickens, just like Dickens barely beat Giuliani in '89. '93, Giuliani barely beat Dickens. And 2 things Dickens implemented that Giuliani really got behind. There was he started the the POP, the POP program, where he would have more cops walking through neighborhoods, community policing, CPOP, community police on patrol. And he introduced Walt Disney and got Walt Disney into investing into Times Square, and you see the results of it 30 years later.
Yeah, cleaned it up.
Yeah, he began the cleanup of Times Square, which Giuliani continued and
took credit
Times
for.
Square.
Yeah.
Times Square in 1989 is a huge difference from Times Square today.
Yeah, I mean that's where you would go to get a hooker. You would like.
That's where you would go. There's a whole lot of shit going on back there. You go to peep shows, the whole 9. Yeah.
Drugs, whatever. Yeah, it was seedy.
Yeah. It was
but
very
in case,
seedy,
but there was a lot of in the effort to clean up a lot of trampled rights, mostly of people of color.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about these trampled rights of these 5 here that this movie talks about, because it's just unbelievable what happens to these people. And the prosecutor, who I think today is disputing the account of this movie, but man, does she look terrible in the way that she went after these assholes.
She's disputing the movie. Meanwhile, her publisher fired her, dropped her. All right. If you're so adamant that this is not right, that you was in the right, why your publishing company dropped you?
Yeah.
Right? Why they not standing behind you? Right.
And we found out later that these kids were totally exonerated by DNA evidence, so there was nothing to these charges. It was complete bullshit, and they forced it out of these kids.
We'll talk about it, because the police and the prosecutor thought they had the DNA evidence, would have found out nothing matched. Dumbasses.
All right, so let's start off. They introduced us to these kids, and you see that these are not bad kids. All these kids are good kids. These aren't like, oh, maybe these are delinquents or they're gang members. No, these were kids brought up right, with good parents, good families. I mean, see, one of them, I think it's, is it Kevin? The one who has the older sister, who's beautiful, by the way, in this movie.
Oh my God, what's her name? She is, and I looked her up.
She's smoking,
She's 30 years old. She don't look a day past 18. She's 30 in real life.
She's beautiful.
Oh,
yeah.
She dropped. Angie, her sister. Kevin is walking with his sister Angie, and my God, is Angie beautiful? What's this woman?
I don't think the real Angie is this hot.
Kylie Bunbury, and at the time of this controversy of this rape, she was only 4 months old. She was born January of 1989. She's 30 years old. She doesn't look a day past 18. Oh my! And I think she's playing like an 18, 19-year-old in this movie.
Yes.
Because she's the older sister of Kevin, right?
Yeah, and he was 14. I mean, just like.
Yep, he was 14 at the time. Yeah, and you see they have a beautiful relationship. The older sister watching over her younger brother while her mother goes to work.
Right, and then we get introduced to Yusuf, who is he's also 14 or 15. And we see that he comes from his mom is a good mother and strong.
He comes from a very disciplined family, because he's of Muslim faith. And if you know anything about young Muslim men at 14, 15 years old, they are disciplined to the utmost. And they have to go through Ramadan and prayer and mosque. So you could tell that. He's a well-behaved young man, and of the five, whenever you hear him speak, I'm surprised. By the way, in real life, Yusuf Salam has a PhD. He got his PhD after he got out of prison. He's Dr. Yusuf Salam now. And of the five, he is the most educated and best spoken. And I wouldn't be surprised if one day he got into politics. That these young men are only 44 and 45. These young men are only 44 and 45 years old right now. They still have a huge future ahead of them.
Yeah. So then we have Raymond Santana, whose father is played by John Leguizamo.
By the great John Leguizamo, yes. And Leguizamo's great in this movie. Yeah, he's phenomenal in this movie.
Yeah, and it shows how he, these kids, starting with this father, are also a victim of their own parent being ignorant, and not knowing that, hey, you can't just leave this kid with your mom.
Raymond is a single. John Leguizamo's character, Mr. Santana, is the single father to Raymond. His mother, Raymond's grandmother, has helped raising him. And you're right, because this man has to work two jobs or double shifts in order to provide for his mother and his son. He leaves the police station because he has no choice but to go back to work, or else he'll get fired, or he needs the money. And his mother, who knows no English, is left behind, and the police take advantage of this. Yeah.
Completely. And then you have Corey Wise, who looks like he's a little bit special needs.
Yes. He didn't learn how to read until he was in prison.
Yeah, and he just seemed like completely in over his head. He wasn't even in the park. This motherfucker was just accompanying Yusuf, who was being picked up by the police after a big roundup sting
He wasn't
operation.
even on the list of suspects.
Right. And he gets convicted of this fucking shit. And then you have Antron McCrae, who's
gets the most years.
Yeah, you have Antron McCrae, whose father is played by
the great Michael K. Williams of Omar the Wire fame.
Omar.
Once again, shout out to Michael K. Williams. Every movie he's in, every series he's in, he steals the show. And he plays a father who's on the brink of a nervous breakdown, who loses control, who
fucks his kid up.
By the he's just tremendous in this movie. And I love the first scene between father and son. You could tell they were close at the time because they're sitting at the breakfast table talking about the Yankees. And they go, it was a beautiful scene. It would be the most beautiful scene between the two, because from then on, the activities of what happened that night and him forcing his son to lie, to say that he was there, really is the beginning of the end of both their relationship and Mr. McCrae's life, because from then on, he just spirals out of control.
We can't blame him either.
Yeah, he was going about the police, but still, you know what? I understand. I understand why he did what he did. I can't blame him.
You can't really blame him because the police completely manipulated him, and we'll talk about it. But anyway, so these are the five kids, and we see a little bit of their lives, and we see that they're not very violent. They're not violent at all, really. These are good kids. And so they don't even know each other. They're all from different parts of the
only two
that
knew
area.
Each other was Yusuf and Corey. The other ones didn't know each other. Yeah. Right.
They just happened to be in the park at that time, and we see them walking in the park, and then all of a sudden we see like some older kids are just beating up some kid.
Right.
And then of course the police start running in, and so because the police are running in, these younger kids just start running, and then it just becomes like an all-out fucking chase fest where all these police are just chasing all these running, and they don't even know why they're chasing them. They're just chasing them or rounding them up for allegedly just like causing havoc in the park. I mean, it's just some
Well,
general charge.
that night, Logan, there were a lot of incidents that happened in the park. A guy was riding a bike. He got dragged off his bike and beaten by a bunch of kids. You had a couple run off, and then you had the rape. But it's funny.
Yeah.
They didn't catch any of the kids that did any of this, including the real rapists.
Right.
What happens is the police was chasing all these kids. And they rounded up all these kids, and they got the 5 that said something.
They got the 5 that they were able to fucking slap around. Right. And they kept feeding them names. And like these people, when they bring them in, they're like, it's Kevin,
I don't
right?
know Raymond. Who's Raymond?
Right.
Who's Corey? I don't know Corey. Yeah.
But then after like hours and hours of just playing good cop, bad cop, actually slapping them around, we see all the different things. And what I wondered about was, I'm sure there was a lot of tape. Maybe eventually did come out, because I think in the documentaries they show some of this tape. But like when they presented to the court, they presented all these doctor tapes that didn't have a lot of the stuff in there that showed the coercion.
Right.
So if you're the lawyer for the defense,
right.
Why aren't you? I guess these are inexperienced lawyers, but like I would think that you would be like, I want to see the whole fucking tape, man. I don't want to see these edits.
To be truthful, the defense did the best job possible, and to be honest with you, the jury dropped the ball, as we'll talk about later on in this case, in my opinion. They totally dropped the ball.
But it's, they present it very well in this thing here, because if all you had to go on were these tapes, which were heavily doctored, they look incriminating, because basically each of these Central Park 5 are pointing at one of the others or two of the others. So they all implicate each other by virtue of these coerced testimonies.
Well, when you get to Corey's testimony on the tape, when they show Corey's talking about he's the ringleader, while the other ones are saying that guy did it, this guy did it, this. There were 5 contradictory stories. All the stories contradicted each other. That alone, and I blame. Now there's two main antagonists here. When it comes to the DA's office, you have Linda Fairstein, who's in charge, I believe, of sex crimes.
Right.
Linda Fairstein, and you have Elizabeth Lederer, who was the district attorney in charge of prosecuting the case. Elizabeth Lederer had serious qualms about this and wasn't sure, and kept questioning Linda Fairstein about how am I going to sell this to the jury. But pressure was put on her, and she ran with it. And she should have known better. She should have went to the judge. She especially when the bloody sock came and the DNA didn't match.
Sock, yeah. Well, let's talk about first before they even go there. What happens is you have a woman raped, and you have this prosecutor, this sex crimes person, like the blonde, played by a woman who is now I think it's Felicity Huffman, right?
Felicity Huffman, yes.
Yeah, who's now facing her own criminal problems, but because of the college scandal.
That's right. She's about to. She pled guilty. She's about to get sentenced. Yeah.
She'll probably get some probation or something. But anyway, because she's not black. But anyway, her idea was like, look, we're losing this war on crime here. Like, we need to make a show of a win. And she's just like, all these people were rounded up the same night of the rape. Hey, why not? Why are we putting these guys in family court and letting them go with some summons based on rowdy behavior? We're just gonna start questioning them, and they must have seen something, even though where they were and where they were caught was very far away from where the rape occurred. She just decides we're going to shoehorn these motherfuckers into a charge. And you can tell that she knows they didn't do shit, and she doesn't care. She just wants to get people blamed for this and to get a win for the police. And so she's happy for them to be completely, and she badgers her people to badger them to get these confessions, and we see how they do it. They threaten they say they're gonna. All they have to do is just, tell them that some guy they didn't know did it. Some guy named Kevin or some guy named Raymond or Yusef or whatever or Antron.
Right.
They don't even know who people are. They're like, just say they did it and we'll get you out of here. You'll go home. And of course, they don't know that they have the other person in the other room saying that they did it. So Kevin is saying that Antron did it. Antron's doing the Kevin, and they're all basically ratting on each other. And then the key to it is Corey, who rats on them all because they beat him up the worst, and he's kind of retarded. And so they just like really lean on him because he becomes kind of like the star witness because he gives an account. He gives a whole story that they wrote for him and forced him, and through many cuts and many different video splices, they created a tape where this guy's confessing to the whole thing. So, man, it's just... And then also, they're minors, and they're being questioned without their parents because one of them had a fake ID that said they were 16. And what I don't understand is, since when do you become not a minor when you're fucking 16? I thought it was 18.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I think when it comes to criminal statutes.
Oh, you can.
As far as
you're not a minor.
Charging somebody you could charge somebody as an adult at 16, not 15.
Yeah, but why can you question? How can you just question them? I would think those.
Oh no, you still got to have Miranda rights. They told this case should have been dropped. The fact that these kids weren't even Miranda, all right? These kids are thrown in rooms without lawyers, without being told their rights, and just being said, no, you gotta
right. Sign this confession.
Yeah, come on.
And so one of them, I think it was Yusef's mom, gets in there before he's able to sign anything, and he doesn't admit to anything. But the rest of the boys they've already signed the statements, made the tapes, and I think even Yusef has made some tape where he's said some shit. So it's like they're fucked. I mean, in terms of their confession, they've given off these confessions, but they're all conflicting, and they all say different things, and it's like clear that they were all made up stories, obviously coerced by the police. I mean, I don't understand how this wasn't obvious to a jury. The jury is probably all white, right? I mean, almost.
The majority was the majority of the jury was people of color, Hispanic and black people. Yeah.
Then you had like the different parents who were just, they were looking out for their kid. So we have the one played by Michael. What's his name?
Michael K. Williams. Michael K.
Yeah. That guy. He's like being threatened about his own criminal record. So he goes in and forces his kid to lie. I mean, screams at him when the kid refuses, and just tells him, "Trust me, they're going to let you go." He's dumb. Like it's just he gets completely himself gets conned by the police, and ends up screwing his son over. Then when he gives testimony to that effect later, he even fucks him up more because he goes on the stand and he's like, "Oh, so we should believe your kid's words?" Well, we have his words. They're written in the statement here. They're on tape. But over and over again, you just see like when it first occurs, when they first start looking for people, they hadn't arrested everybody the first night. They go out and scour the neighborhood and start just arresting everybody. I mean, there's that one scene where they're just rounding all kinds of people up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I guess they must have rounded up like much more than 5, right? They probably rounded up like 20 kids.
There was like 40 kids, I believe, they rounded up.
Yeah, and they settled on these 5 because they were able. I guess because they were probably the youngest, and they were the easiest to impress upon that they could get confessions out of. So.
And I also believe they all admitted to being in the park at some time that night.
Yeah, except for Corey. But then you have then they show
Corey wasn't initially questioned. He accompanied his best friend Yusef.
Right.
To the precinct.
Because Yusef got picked up.
Right, right.
Somebody mentioned his name or somebody. I don't know. But all that happened. So all this happens in part one. Part one, we see the coercion. We see just the cases that they're shoehorning this case in. And even the prosecutors themselves are like, look, we really don't have much here. They're all giving different accounts, and this evil bitch, this blonde bitch, is like, no, we can do this. Like, all we have to do is just separate the trials, and then we can, if we do it right, we can have each one implicate the other, and we won't have to account for the fact that all these statements are inconsistent. And they also got some evidence from a sock, some cum in a sock that they have, and they just keep it in their back pocket. They never tell the defense about it.
They think that's the smoking gun. Yeah.
Right. But then they get it tested, and it happens to be the real rapist semen, and we find out probably in parts 3 and 4 who that is. But it has nothing to do with these kids. They have no test. There's no match. And they have some DNA from her vagina, but they tested it, and it's inconclusive. And so, of course, the prosecutor's like, so they couldn't rule them out, It could still be them. Anyway, so they put on a hell, and then we see the lawyers they get. These aren't the greatest lawyers. One of them is the divorce attorney. One seems to be like a public guy.
Played by a not recognizable Blair Underwood.
You don't think he was recognizable in that?
No, when I was like, wait a minute, and my girl's telling me, hey, that's Blair Underwood. I said, get the fuck out of here. Yeah, Blair Underwood. And you had Raymond's lawyer was played by Christopher Jackson, who was phenomenal, got all types of awards as George Washington on the multi-million-dollar successful play Hamilton.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So then you have kind of like a politician-looking guy for the Hispanic guy for.
That's Christopher Jackson,
Raymond.
the Broadway star. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's the guy that was in Hamilton.
Yeah, and he's not Hispanic, but he plays an Hispanic to the T. He's black in real life. He's a light-skinned black dude, but he plays this elegant Puerto Rican wannabe politician to the T.
Yeah. Then you have a white guy who's like a public advocate or something. You talk about Mickey Joseph is he's played by Joshua Jackson. Mickey Joseph, who in real life has worked for years with the legendary DNA expert who helped OJ get off the hook, Barry Scheck. Okay. So he was probably the best out of them.
He was the best. He was the best lawyer, and he was the most experienced criminal defense lawyer of the whole crew. Because a lot like Raymond Santana's a lawyer, worked for the DA's office in the Bronx, and was an aspiring politician. But you could tell he was more looks than talent. Mickey Joseph was the most talented out of all of them. And I got to give the divorce attorney credit. He was pretty good during the trial. I mean, his opening statement, he was kind of nervous, but while the trial was going on, he seemed to get his bearings and was doing better. I cannot fault the legal team. The defense team did the best they could considering the odds against them, and there was still enough to get these kids off. I mean, because in my opinion, the DA, the DA's office, kept putting their foot in the mouth, especially with the sock and with Corey's side session. That once Corey got on the stand, if you're the jury, you got to say, wait a minute, he can't read the fucking test. He can't read what he wrote. Well, what the hell is this? And he's telling the judge, and he's telling them, I can't read this. I can't read this. I don't know what I wrote. I can't read.
He's like, is this your signature? He's like, look, whatever. I didn't do it. I didn't read it. He's like, read that part. And they try to get him to read a part. He can't even read one sentence. So, yeah, the whole thing looks like a sham. I mean, but at the same time, they bring out the victim. she's hobbling. She can't remember anything, but they do it for the sympathy for
And
the
I
jury.
got a problem with the victim years later. Today I got the problem with her. Now back then, I don't, she can't remember. I mean, of course, she was raped. It's the most traumatic experience of her life. But 30 years later, no, not even 30 years later. 15 years later, when the real rapist came out and said he did it, this is a woman who said she couldn't remember everything. All of a sudden, like, well, it felt like more than one person that attacked me. You said you didn't remember anything.
She said that?
Yeah.
She,
Yeah.
oh,
To this
man.
day, she refuses to think only one person raped her. But you said you don't remember anything. Now all of a sudden,
She didn't even remember going jogging.
I know.
I mean,
Come on, make up your mind, baby. Come on.
yeah, that's terrible. She would do
Yeah.
that. But anyway, I can't really blame a victim, but at the same time, like
Yeah, but you
it's
keep
not
your
helpful.
story straight. Either you remember or
Keep
you
your
don't.
story
I
straight.
mean,
Yeah.
it's the most traumatic thing that anybody could ever go through. I understand that, but
Don't fuck up
why are
people's
you
lives.
saying this? Yeah, why are
Yeah.
you saying it? Well, it was too late. They were exonerated anyway. They had to release anyway because the DNA only matched that guy and none of the other kids.
Yeah. Now, so they go through this trial, and we see that the prosecutions they present a very tough case against these guys, and they come up with a narrative which I feel like a lot of people in the jury probably just understood, like, oh yeah, like, there's a lot of kids getting out of hand in the city these days, and we need to send a message and all that kind of narrative about wilding and
Let me tell
the
you
youth.
something. This was a month. This happened a month before my 21st birthday. Okay, I was heavily into hip hop and street culture at that time. Wilding was that term was created because of this case, where the police was like,
Right.
oh, I heard some kids say we're out here wilding, and then that's how it became a popular term.
Right.
That term was in nobody's lexicon until
Right.
that night when they came up when the prosecutor and the criminal investigators had a press conference saying, oh, well, we heard some kids say, using the street term, we're wilding. No, you made
Right.
up the fucking street term, motherfucker. Oh, my
They do that
God.
all the time too. They try to scare people in the suburbs about the city
Yes, yes.
by like talking about, like, even when Hillary Clinton talked about, like, super predators and just all these terms, man, like, so
Came
it
out
was
of
interesting.
these were made up term, animals, wilding, the whole
Right.
nine. Oh my
Oh
God.
yeah, and that's another thing is we see the prosecutor calling them animals all the time through the whole thing, and another party that was extremely culpable here was the press, the Daily News, the New York Post. They were writing scathing articles about how this has to stop,
and they ran Donald Trump's paid ad asking
Right.
for the execution of these 5 young men.
Yeah, they in the second part, in the beginning, they show the footage of Trump talking about, yeah, I hate these people who raped this woman and blah blah, and he thinks that we should bring back the death penalty and murder them. And when they ask the mom about that when the press encounter her when she's going into the court, she's just freaking out. She's like, "What? What did you say?" She's like, "Oh yeah, Donald Trump wants to kill your son, wants to give him the death penalty." And she's like, "What do you say to that?" So, like, why do they even ask her that question, man? It's like, Well, we see it's funny because they're watching Donald Trump on TV, and one of the moms is like, "I think I'm going to kill this
15 minutes
motherfucker."
almost up.
Yeah, and they're like, "Oh, don't bother."
15 minutes over.
His 15 minutes are over.
almost up.
Yeah, we're still living in those 15 minutes, man. It's like not over.
Those 15 minutes are far from over.
Oh man, what a fucking evil piece of shit. But he still, to this day, is like, "Yeah, I was right." Fuck you, man. Even
he still
against
thinks
the
they
DNA.
did it. He still
Right.
thinks everybody that was on the government side. The only person that is a government official who feels they were wrong, who believes they were wrong, is our great mayor, Bill de Blasio. Everybody else is, they had something to do with it, or blah, blah, blah. The facts
Well,
are the
anyway,
facts, man. Yeah.
we'll get into the. Let's just. We won't focus on the aftermath because that'll come up in
No,
the.
let's continue. Let's continue with the Jarrell Jerome, who plays Corey Rise, and he's the only actor to play one of the Central Park Five as both a child and as an adult. He continues on parts 3 and 4, while the rest of the cast, rest of the boys are taken over by adult actors. His scene
And we
on
see
the
him.
stand, his scene on the stand where he's talking about how he can't read. Okay, yeah, I've been skipping school because I can't read. Oh my God! How can you be on the jury and think this kid was involved? He couldn't even read his own confession. So what? How he write a so-called confession if he can't read it?
Yeah, and then he goes, and then they have the forensic guy on there, and he lets it slip out that they found a sock. He lets it slip out that they tested a sock, and all of a sudden, like, that's the first thing these lawyers have heard about the sock, and they think it's over, because if you don't hand over a relevant piece of information to your defense, that's called exculpatory material. The case gets thrown out.
Can be dismissed, and the case can be dismissed and thrown out. Yes.
But they also mentioned the fact that they got this judge who is very sympathetic to the police, and they chose him purposely because he's basically got like a 90% conviction rate when it comes to...
Yeah, because they call Rikers Island Galligan's Island. The Galligan was the judge. Yeah.
Because most people who go in front of him, almost 99%, they get
convicted.
And so they keep trying to take deals. And they offering them deals, but these kids are just like, no, we're not going to lie. We didn't do this. We were forced to say we did.
That's another thing. Why would the state and the city offer these kids a deal if they were so gung ho on they're guilty? No way in the world. The state of California and the city of Los Angeles didn't offer OJ a deal because they knew they had him, right? So if you know you have the guy, why are you offering the guy a deal? Why are you offering these kids a deal? Because that sock shit came out and they were looking foolish and they wanted to save face.
That's exactly it. And so they should have taken that. But even then, they did take it as a sign that there was a weak case. But guess what? They went with their weak case. They made an emotional appeal. They showed the victim like limping to the. They talked about her injuries, and so they just appealed to their emotions, and they painted a picture of like when she gives her closing argument, she's like, these kids had their fun, but now they're going to have to face the consequences, like they all had such a great time raping this girl, just depicting them as these little kids, depicting them as these hardened criminals. Another thing is when they arrest 4 of the kids, they put them in juvie, but the one, Corey, who's special needs, 16, they put him in fucking Rikers, and you see them putting him in this cell with these fucking hardened criminals, and he's just this little boy. He probably got raped, man. I mean, there's no question. I think
we'll talk about it. But I mean, what happens to him makes you want to makes you want to shoot Linda Fairstein. Just what happens to him alone.
Well, I'm surprised this bitch isn't in hiding. Because I'm sure she's getting death threats from this. You know what I mean? I mean, like, I'm sure people are watching this and be like, "Who is this bitch?" And like, I mean, even the DA, who is painted a little more sympathetic, she goes along with it. She's not innocent. Yeah. You know what I mean? She knows it's fishy. And
because she could have shut it. She could have shut the thing down. She didn't.
Right, and she could have not gone. And remember, the white attorney goes to her and is like, "Listen, just play fair, okay?" Like, and then when she doesn't disclose the sock, he's like, "That's not playing fair, man. Like, what are you doing?" And she even admits, she's like, "It's not about fair. It's not about truth. It's about politics." Mm-hmm. And it's like, and it's about survival. And there's nothing just or true about survival. It's just we just have to do it. So she basically admits she knows she's full of shit and she's doing it anyway. And
Yep.
that's like where she shows her true colors. So as much as she doubts, the only reason she doubts is because she doubts she can win, based on these facts, but not because she has any conscience about what they're doing. She doesn't give a fuck.
Mhm.
So she
Mhm.
doesn't. She comes off at the end just as bad as the other one, maybe worse, because she
Worse,
seems
because
like
she
she's
knew.
good.
She said from the
Right.
beginning that the case was weak, yet she went along with it.
But I guess the true evil is the blonde, because she was just like vicious against these kids, and she didn't give a fuck that they didn't do it. She just wanted the confessions, and she wanted to get the credit for
And
solving the case.
she made a ton of money off this case.
Did she?
Yeah, writing books, the whole
Oh,
nine. She made a ton of money off this case.
oh man,
I told you, her book publisher, they fired her right after the movie came out.
crazy. What the fuck, man? So I can see now that she's probably going to be facing a lot of music soon, because it's been a long time. I'm just, when I first um, knew about this case, I thought that they were exonerated a lot sooner than when they were. It was like years later. I mean, they served a lot of jail time. These kids.
Yes, yes. Well, which
Uh,
we will talk about it. We'll talk about it in the next week. But yeah, they served, especially Corey, and Corey went through the most. And the next two episodes will show their times in prison, the ridicule they had to go through, the struggle that parents went through in order to try to
right.
maintain their innocence and fighting to try to get them out of prison. Um,
So we should. Let's
Michael K. Williams was great in this episode. John Leguizamo was great in these two episodes. The next two episodes, you're going to see the talent that Niecy Nash, star of Claws, is as Corey's mother, as she is fierce in her adamacy that her son is innocent and that she is doing everything she can to right a wrong.
So when we should talk about the story arc with the father, played by Michael C.
Yes,
Williams,
because
and then
he begins to delve into alcohol and drugs. He disappears on his family. This
he
is
was
guilt.
not going to
This is
court.
guilt. Yeah, because he's going back into old habits. He had cleaned himself up. He was an ex-con,
Right.
an ex-alcoholic who had turned his life around for his family. Because of what happened with his son, because he allowed a officer to manipulate him, he spiraled back into old habits.
Yeah, and so his son and his relationship got destroyed by this, because one, he in a way got his son into it by forcing him to lie,
To lie.
and then also because he was more concerned about his own problems, like because the police threatened to tell his job that he was a felon, so he would have lost his job. So he went in there and tried to force his kid to give a confession to save his own ass.
Mm-hmm.
So he feels totally guilty. They put him on the stand and they twist him up on the stand, and he ends up implicating his son even more. So he doesn't help at all. And meanwhile, yeah, he's abandoning the family, and not having not doing well by them. So then we get to the verdict, which is the end of part two, and they all get convicted, and it's just like the saddest ending you could ever see. Uh, in fact, it was funny because there was one part like about 45 minutes before the end where it looks like they're at trial, and the DNA guy is there, and he's just talking about how, yeah, like none of these kids are, match this DNA, and the whole courtroom erupts. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh man, you could just end it right there. It would be like this happy ending, like that
Mm-hmm.
thing we reviewed for HBO where the guy gets with that the night of.
The night of, right,
Um,
right, right.
right at the end of that, he gets off. Spoiler alert. But at the same time, like it almost is like I was like I wanted to stop the movie or the show right then, like when they found the DNA of his match. I was like, oh, it's over. They won. No. Didn't mean anything. So what really fucked them over was the confessions. It was just really hard for the jury to believe that these kids were forced to lie, and that they they lied in such detail. That's the thing that I think that screwed them up the most.
By the way, one of the 2020 a month ago had a 2-hour special on this case, and they interviewed the one juror that was holding out. There was a one juror, a white lady, I forgot her name. She felt the same thing that we felt, that the videotapes that they showed them contradicted each other. That Corey
they were
unable
jumpy
to read
too.
it.
They're jumping Corey, like you could tell they were cut.
Yeah, and Corey unable to read his own quote unquote confession statement. She had reservations. She didn't feel there was reasonable doubt, and so she was the one person that voted not guilty, and she admitted this. She allowed the other 11 jurors to bully her into saying.
Right.
And she allowed the other 11 jurors to bully her in order to get her 12th and final guilty vote.
Yeah. And no matter what they had all the different interrogators on the stand, and they all contradicted each other about what happened in the room, who was crying, who wasn't crying.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. Like, the jury believed the prosecution, and they convicted these boys, and that's the end of part 2. So, and it's hard to watch, because it's like the outcome, and that these people aren't going to get off for a long, long time. So, we'll talk about that part when we talk about part 3 and 4, about the aftermath of this. But man, so what were you when this was happening and you had read about it? Did you know that these guys were innocent in your mind?
My father and I felt all along they were innocent. Now my mother, she had mixed feelings because she's a woman, and there was that emotion, and she refused to read about the case because of what happened to the woman. But my father and I were reading it all the time, and we were like, nah, this. And whenever we bring it up, my mother's like, please don't talk about this. I don't want to hear, because she didn't want to think about her or her 2 daughters being attacked like that. So I understand why my mother was like that. So we didn't discuss it with her. But amongst my father and I, we used to talk about it all the time. We read the paper every day. It's like, these kids didn't do it. These kids didn't do it. These kids didn't do it. My father's an ex-con. He'll tell you straight up. I know criminals when I see one. These kids are quiet boys. They're not criminals. Yeah,
people watching too many Death Wish.
My own father's words. These kids are quiet boys. They're not criminals. My father not only was an ex-con, he was a former juvenile delinquent social worker, counselor. And he used to deal with kids all the time, 14 to 18 years old. These kids did not fit the kids he used to work with, and he said that. So he was like, no. He was like, Rob,
you can
these kids didn't do it. Yeah.
You can just look at their pictures, and I don't mean the actors playing these roles, but they chose
the real life kids, yeah.
And they chose these actors because they really did look like the kids.
Yes, these actors look just like these young kids. Yes.
And they did a great job, by the way. Some great acting. I heard.
By the way,
that
I recommend 3 things other than this miniseries, this limited series, to watch in conjunction with this limited series. Also on Netflix, Oprah Winfrey interviews the entire cast and the real life 5 men, and that shit is emotional. It is unbelievable, and the 5 men talk about their lives after prison and the whole 9. So I recommend that. If you go to ABC On Demand and watch the 2020 episode that happened a month ago, where they 2-hour special where they talk about the case from 30 years ago and the aftermath. And this would be a little harder to find. I'm not sure if it's on. You might have to purchase it off of PBS.com because they haven't shown it in a while. But the Ken Burns, the great Ken Burns, the #1 documentarian in the world, Ken Burns, the man who did the jazz and baseball and the Jack Johnson documentaries, did a documentary called The Central Park 5. And his daughter, Sarah Burns, wrote a book about the case. And that documentary, along with Sarah Burns' book, helped them get their money. And de Blasio saying, look, we got to right this wrong. But those, you have to watch that documentary, too. It's called The Central Park Five by Ken Burns. So those are all great accompaniments to this limited series, and all must watch.
Definitely. Yeah, there's been a lot about this. Hindsight is fucking 2020, but this shit's still going on today, man. It's not like it's over. This is just one of the many times this has happened, and it happened to be righted. But you think about all the people that are rotting in jail without any kind of big movie about them. You know what I mean? And they're not getting out.
You're right about that. And they're not getting out. No.
Right. So they're watching this being like, yeah, what about me? But hopefully with time, with new DNA, I see there's a lot of convictions being, undone. So hopefully we'll see more. But, man, you can't give back these people their time. Now,
like if you watch the Oprah documentary, Kevin Richardson says, so what? We got the money. That no amount of money in the world could give us back the years we lost that we were in prison.
Yeah, these were very promising kids, and as you said, one became a doctor. So they, who knows what they would have done if they didn't get caught up in this crap.
Even Corey, who all it out, and I hate to say this, he was severely mentally affected by the situation, and while he was slow before he got into prison, he's even worse now. Has donated thousands of dollars to victims' rights. Right? And this is coming from his own heart, from what he's seen. Yes.
I heard it took him years to even shower without boxers on.
I don't blame him. Yeah.
Messed up, man.
And I don't think he's ever had a significant relationship with a woman. He might still be a virgin to this day.
Right. Yeah. So we're gonna go to part.
And by the way, all five of these kids were they mentioned this. They were all virgins when they went into prison. All right, now they're rapists, right? They're all virgins when they go into prison.
Right. Yeah. Oh man, just heartbreaking stuff. So we're going to come back to it. We're going to look at parts 3 and 4 and discuss the aftermath of this. And it's somewhat of a happy ending, but a tragedy in between, for sure, of time and wasted life. So we will be into that. So One Silverman, thanks for bringing this to us again. Another great one and a tough one to look at, but everyone should watch it because...
Hey, you thought parts 1 and 2 were tough to watch. Wait till you see parts 3 and 4. Oh, my God.
Oh, it's even worse, huh? I thought that was the worst of it. Oh, my God.
No. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Yeah.
Oh, shit. Okay. So we'll be looking at that, and we'll have to get ready for it. But important stuff here. Everybody needs to see it because even if you think, oh, I don't want to watch that, it's too tragic, you just need to because otherwise you'll never kind of wake up to it. Even me, like, I kind of thought they got out like much sooner than fucking 15 years or 10 years or whatever. So I was surprised. Anyway, there were some things in here that you will see that you probably didn't see in other documentaries because they got some other, they got some good acting in there and good portrayals that maybe you didn't see in documentaries or other things. So we'll talk about that. Anyway, One Silverman, thanks for coming on. We'll talk next week.
See you next week, big man. Later.
All right, peace. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Check us out at geekdom101.com, YouTube, and at Logan's Movie on Twitter. Peace.